Hi, everyone. This is Adam Woolley. I'm the managing director of Circus now, and we have put together a little panel on the role of competition in circus. We have a lot of people joining me today, all of whom I'm very excited about, from the world of casting, from the world of running competitions, from the world of directing circus schools, and then also participating in competitions themselves as artists. So I'm going to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves, starting with Greg Kennedy. Greg Kennedy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I actually come from the juggling community. I've been a professional juggler for over 20 years, mostly freelance, but I've also worked for some other large companies, Cirque du Soleil and some of the other smaller ones than that. On top of that, I also am co-owner of the Philadelphia School of Circus Arts here in Philadelphia. And as a kid, I actually competed in the International Jugglers Association Championships on a couple occasions and took some gold medals. But it's kind of a little bit separate thing from the circus competition. So, and that's about it.
Great, thank you. We also have with us Rebecca Starr. Rebecca, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, I am a longtime circus artist and instructor. I've been performing professionally for, I think, the last 16 years. I have a unique perspective because I'm deep in the circus world, but I also got into the pole fitness world and competed a bunch in that world. And I recently joined the board for the U.S. Aerial, and our big thing is the U.S. Aerial Championships.
Awesome, thank you so much. Elsie Smith.
Thanks, Adam. I am currently the artistic director of the New England Center for Circus Arts, and we have the longest running professional training program in the United States. And I'm also a co-founder of the performing company Nimble Arts with my twin sister. Our careers have spanned from touring with Cirque du Soleil to other touring companies. And then we've also competed at circus competitions in like the Wuxia Festival in China, festivals in Mexico City, and in Albacete, Spain.
Wonderful. Shayna Swanson joining us from Chicago.
Hi, my name is Shayna. I am the founder and artistic director of Loft Circus Arts in Chicago. We also have a professional training program, and we're just expanding to a 2-year program. And I have been performing circus for probably about 18 years now, and I've performed in circus competitions in Cuba, and I've also done like the Acrobatic Aerial Arts Festival in Denver, and I've also judged competitions, so I have sort of experience all over the board with that as well. And I've helped a lot of people prepare for competitions.
Great. Jessica, on to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica, and I'm the owner of the Aerial Classroom in Los Angeles, where we have classes in aerial arts for the public to take. Each year, I also produce a circus competition called Circus Star. So I try to get involved in the community in that way, bringing a competition to performers. And I've also been a performer myself in aerial arts for the past 13 years. I came into aerial arts with a background in different types of dance like ballet and jazz and modern dance, but just really fell in love with aerial arts and kind of made that my passion, made it my career, and went into teaching from there soon after I started.
Great. Tammy, you're up.
Hi everyone, my name is Tammy Slichter and I am the founder of the U.S. Aerial Championships. My background is varied and like a rainbow. I have a PhD in math, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a business consultant to help you grow your business, and I'm an event producer, which is the skill that I applied to start the U.S. Aerial Championships. I'm an aerialist by hobby, not by career, and my career is entrepreneurship and event production. So I put that into starting the U.S. Aerial Championships to try to provide as much value to the community that I so dearly love as possible.
Great. And finally, we have Samuel joining us. Samuel, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Samuel Roy. I'm an acrobatic talent scout at Cirque du Soleil. And my background was, I also have an artist background. I did my formation at the National Circus School in Montreal. I was a specialist of juggling and Russian bar. So I know very well the work of Greg, and I really appreciate it. And after that, I created my own company that's called Throw to Catch, and also I own a training studio here in Montreal.
Well, sounds like we lost you there a little bit, Samuel.
It's called Studio Art.
There you are. Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. I'm going to go through and just mute some people right now so that we can hear. So if you start talking and we can't hear you, it's probably because I've muted your microphone or background noise started to go there. So Samuel, I'm actually going to direct my first question right back at you. As a talent scout for Cirque du Soleil, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what role athletic or artistic competitions play in your casting process. And specifically, if you look at athletic and artistic circus competitions differently. I know that as a casting agent, you probably go to strictly gymnastics and strictly diving and strictly rhythmic competitions as part of your job. And tell us a little bit about the role that competitions play there and kind of the different roles between circus competitions and athletic competitions in your experience.
Well, first of all, at casting, we all have different specialties because there's many scouts that are working in the team. My specialty is circus because I come from this world. So I actually don't go that often to all the sports and athletic competitions, but I go in many circus competitions in Europe. For example, Circus, Young Stage, Paris, Monaco. And if I can maybe compare the athletic competition or this world with the circus world, if we take the example of the Paris Festival, it's also a competition, but I feel that the spirit of competition is less present than in other disciplines. I often know many artists that are in that festival. And in the backstage, it's really not like a competition. All the artists are speaking to each other. They are living this experience together. They are trying to support each other. And the energy is actually very nice. And for us that go see a circus competition, it's not like a sport event. So we are not looking at who's going to be the best or who's going to win the medals or anything like that. And I think it's probably the same thing for all the producers that are going to see these kind of events for circus. We're more looking for what do we need, and the need of the different companies are very different. And for example, at Cirque, we can need an artist that didn't win anything or that doesn't have the gold medal or something like that, and we still have the need to hire him for a specific project or position on our shows.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think what I want to take about your answer and expand on to either yourself again or other people is when we're talking about competitions, and this is, a panel about competitions and the role of competition in circus. Most of the time, circus festivals or circus competitions have a very different flavor, both as an audience member and as a judge and as an audience member and as a participant than, say, athletic competitions. So even though we're using the same word, at least in English, competition, I feel like part of what you're pointing up is there's a really different kind of feeling or vibe or je ne sais quoi to, that's Adam's terrible French, to the idea of a circus competition or a circus festival. So I want to open up the floor a little bit and either yourself or someone else just kind of speak to your experience about how competition feels in a circus environment.
Well, as I spoke already, I will let someone else speak and I will answer after.
This is Elsie speaking. My experience with circus festivals have been exactly what Samuel mentioned, that it's an opportunity for new talent to show off their polished material. It's not necessarily a place for people to sort of get out on stage for the first time. and there are opportunities to sort of rub shoulders with the old and the new. So it's almost like an alumni reunion feeling for some people, or the opportunity to sort of, wow, oh my goodness, that's Boris over there, and oh, did you know that that guy did that thing at Moscow Circus, and he's over there, wow. So it's a historical opportunity to honor the traditions of circus arts while also seeing what's new and glorious coming down the pike.
I think this is Shayna talking. I think that I agree with what Elsie said in regards to competitions in other countries, and maybe a little bit here, but I think that some of the competitions that I've been to and that I've been a part of in the United States have a much more kind of stressed out competitive vibe. And I think it's sort of a shame. And I also think that it's because it's so new here that people are coming at them more with an experience and a background of gymnastics or dance or something like that, where, the backstage vibe is so high strung and high energy and intensity that that's how we're used to in this country acting at competitions. And I think, and I hope that as they become more common in this country, people will learn that this isn't so much about you winning as it's about you getting to meet other people and getting to see other people's interesting work. And like Samuel said, if there's an agent in the audience, they probably don't care if you won because they're looking for something really specific. And maybe that specific thing isn't the winning thing, but it's still an important thing. So I think that in the United States, we have a long way to go with these types of competitions to finally achieve that cool, community type of feeling. But I think that we're going to get there. It's going to be awesome.
Samuel, you wanted to say something.
I just wanted to compare something, to compare the circus competition to other kind of sport competitions. When you're in sports or in any athletic disciplines, you compare each athletes or everybody doing the same things or the same technique or the same skills. And in the circus competition, we call it a competition, but it's really hard to compare a contortionist and a Chinese pole act or a trapeze act and a juggler. So for me, it's the spirit of competition is not there, because if it would be only a Chinese pole artist, then we could really speak about the competition factor. But now for me, what exists in circus and in other festivals that I suffer now, it's more a showcase than a real competition.
Yeah. Tammy, you wanted to say something.
Elsie.
Oh, Elsie, sorry. I wanted to toss it to Tammy. And then Greg, I'd like you to speak a little bit about the same subject in the juggling world.
Sure.
But Tammy.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to say, and maybe Rebecca has something to say about this as well, but I think the backstage vibe being very stressed out is something actually that we're not far away from reaching, and I think that's as simple as open and clear communication with the competitors and the producer, and that's something that we've been working on at US Aerial, letting everyone know exactly what Samuel is saying, and that's what US Aerial's been focusing on, is trying to listen. It's not about winning, it's about you made it. Being on stage at all is a huge success, and just present your best work, and all these various eyes are on you, and that's what it's about. And we're one big family, and we're here to support each other, and it's not about really that intense competition. And we're really focused on that this year, and everybody's on board. I don't know, Rebecca, if you have something to say about that.
I would just say that it's very interesting, because I think it kind of touches back to more, I think, a little bit of what Samuel was saying, what Elsie was saying, that it's not so much about the competition. It's really about the networking that you do while you're there. It's the other people who are also there competing that you meet. It's the people who are in the audience who come to watch it. It's all the people who love this, who are there, who want to see it, who want to see what's new and what's happening. And it's just a chance for you to get to meet them, see them face to face, not just know them on Facebook or by their videos, but to start, making those connections. And in the circus world, we all know that it really is all about who you know. You get work because people think of you and they think you're amazing and they hire you. And these, competitions, festivals, whatever we want to call them, they are that.
Yeah.
I think there's
a difference between how people get into festivals, like the traditional festivals in Europe and China, very often your agent helps you get invited, and your entire participation is covered. And I remember, especially when I was at Wuxia and in Albacete in Spain, it was such an honor just to be invited to participate in the festival that whether you left with a medal or not was a little bit beside the point. You had already sort of succeeded by getting there. And I think that might be one of the differences between those traditional circus festivals and some of the competitions that are happening, especially in the United States, where because of funding reasons and various ways that the models have been created, the performers are paying their way and applying on their own behalf rather than being applied for.
Yeah, I want to throw the ball to Greg a little bit, just because I think the juggling community.
Sure.
Yeah, get it. The juggling community in particular has a history of kind of experience with this idea of sportification, which is, I think, a topic that we're going to be talking more and more about as we continue this conversation. And so, Greg, telling us a little bit about the history of the two major juggling festivals in the United States, and also your experience with them and how they vibe with what we're talking about or not.
Sure. When I came up as a juggler in the late 80s and early 90s, the only organization around was the International Jugglers Association Championships. And it had 3 competitions, one for juniors, those people under 18, one for individuals, and one for teams, which would be any group for 2 or more people. Now, like Samuel was saying earlier, it's hard to judge a contortionist versus a Chinese pole. Even within juggling, you've got Diablo, you've got Devil Stick, you've got clubs and balls and rings. And then even me, the year I went in 96 and took the gold medal, people didn't really know what I was doing, but they just thought it was really cool because it was rolling balls and a clear bowl. So it becomes very difficult for the judges to decide what's the best act. You know, in some ways they just kind of have to take a little bit of what the audience gave and how many balls you have. And people have been in the juggling community for decades and decades, but they're still taking their best guess. I know I've judged several times for the IJA, and there's like 8 of us, and by the end of the night, half the people disagree with you, half the people agree with you. So that was very difficult for the judges to handle. So another organization came about in the early 2000s, started up by Jason Garfield, called the WJF. And what he was trying to do is individualize the props. So they would actually have a 3-ball competition versus all the other 3-ball competitions, a 4-ball competition versus all the 4, 3-club, 4-club, 5-club. And so it would separate all the things. The difficulty with that is you have so many people in so many competitions that, there's so many medals were given away. So that got difficult too. So it's a trade in balance between the different organizations. Right now, I think people still think the IJA, at least in America, is the primary, mainly because it has a history of 50 years. And the WJF is fairly new. But in some sense, what's nice about both competitions, someone was speaking earlier about being invited by an agent. Anyone can apply to this. You don't have to be an actively working juggler. A lot of the best jugglers in the world right now are 16-year-old kids who just happen to be able to do 7 clubs and back crosses. And so if you send in, now they do it by video, but in the old days, you just go in and go and do preliminaries. But in a panel of experienced jugglers like myself would go through, and there's usually about 9 or 11 for preliminaries, and we would rate the people, and they just kind of decide the top 7 that are going to actually appear on stage. So I kind of like that it's more of an sort of an open competition that anybody can go to, and I'd like to see a little bit more of that in the circus competitions in Europe and in America.
It's great. Thank you so much. I'm just going to keep saying toss the ball. I want to toss the ball over to Jessica. Jessica, tell us a little bit about your competition. You're kind of our West Coast representative right now. So tell us a little bit about your competition and how you deal a little bit with what Greg was talking about the fact that it's difficult to compare apples and oranges.
Yeah, the way Circus Star is run is it's very open. It's basically any circus act can submit an audition tape, and then, we select out of the audition pool, we select a certain number of them to compete in a live event. So, last year we had people do straps, we had people do silks, we had lots of lyra. There's a variety, so it was very open. And I know that we did get a lot of feedback from some of the contestants that said they really enjoyed and liked the fact that it wasn't certain categories of things, that it was more open, so that they, as an artist, could feel more comfortable to like showcase what they wanted to showcase and not feel like they had to fit into like a rigid category with what they were doing. So they had more creativity, I guess, was the feedback on that. And so I noticed too that because everyone was kind of doing different apparatuses, they were pretty supportive of each other in general. So I know backstage, everyone was like cheering for everyone when they got, finished doing their performance. They were hugging backstage. So it was really kind of cool to see how people were making those connections with, some of their peers that they've never met before. So that was really cool for me, because one of the reasons why I started the competition was so that people could, meet other people like them, share an experience like that with people like them, and also get in front of like the judges, get the judge feedback to help improve themselves as an artist, so that they can get out in the performance world and just keep bettering themselves.
Great. Rebecca, I know you have to leave in a moment, so I wanted to throw the next little question to you, which is kind of delving a little more specifically into this idea of sportification. I know that you're really involved in the pole sport or pole fitness community, where competition is a big thing, and they've actually gone through the process of kind of becoming a recognized sport to a certain extent. What has your experience with those competitions been, and how do you feel like the sportification that community has really intentionally pursued affected the art or the sport?
That is a very interesting question. I think that the sportification of the pole world has actually been extremely divisive. I would say that there's definitely two distinct camps of people who want it to be more sporty and people who want it to be more artistic. And unfortunately, the divide is getting farther and farther and farther. It's interesting that I'm on the board for competition, because I'm actually not a huge fan of the sportification. I'm much more a fan of the artistic model, whether it be a competition or a festival. Yeah, there's definitely a group of people who want to see pole and want to see these sort of, acrobatics that we do go more the Olympic route. And then there is a whole group of people that do not want that at all and feel like it will lose the art, and it will lose the drama, and it will lose the flavor, and it will just start to be, points on a roster. And it's extremely divisive.
Tammy?
To add on to Rebecca, to her point, yes, she is on our board, and we are a competition, and that is what we call ourselves, but we're trying more and more to make it less competition, more festival. We're sort of walking a fine line, because we do have pole in our competition, and it was born out of the pole competition industry, the U.S. Aerial Championships. But as we've grown more and learn more, we're trying to keep the art. Art is very important to U.S. Aerial. We're not about sport, and necessarily, definitely it's not going to turn into an Olympic type of thing. I don't really have much more to say other than that, but.
I mean, I think it's important to note that at least in the pole world, it's split into, there's many, many, many different competitions, and some of them are absolutely 100% pole sport based, which would be more like the PSO competitions. And well, those are a little tricky. I shouldn't make that so clear, but definitely like the World Pole Sports competition which is very, very, very sport based. And then there's like other competitions that have been built out of that actually call themselves, pole art competitions, where they're like, it's not about the tricks, it's not about the scoring. Yes, you should do hard stuff. Yes, you should do hard moves, but it is more about, the artistry of the piece and what you're trying to say with your movement, not just what you're doing. So I would say people are definitely like picking a side and then just, choreographing their stuff specifically depending on which side that they've decided to go with.
Right. Well, and I think it's interesting. I want to throw this question a little bit towards Elsie and Shayna as kind of directors of professional training programs in the United States. What do you think, how do you see sportification happening in your schools or not happening in your schools? And what do you think kind of the healthy role for this idea of leveling or technical development and innovation could be for circus arts in particular? I'm talking about aerial, but also maybe talking about other things. I think that we've all had a little bit of experience with, especially with aerial, gradating technical levels and saying, well, this trick is harder than this trick, but is easier than this trick. And from an educational standpoint, that's a really useful tool. But how does that start to affect kind of the development of the art form or the development of the sport, depending on how you look at it? I can tell I've asked an obtuse question when everyone stops.
Well, I don't think it's obtuse. I just don't really see it having much of an effect on the work that my students are creating. I don't see my students specifically creating acts to go into competitions. I see some people that like maybe have recently graduated our program working on things like that. And I see sometimes like professionals working on things like that. But in terms of like what my students in my professional program are working towards, they're working towards acts that are going to be appealing in a professional performance showcase rather than in a competition environment. So I don't, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that's exactly the experience that I have had, is what Shayna just expressed, is from a circus school perspective, where our students are already, they're working at a pretty high level. Their focus is on their professional careers, not on successfully making it to a medal at an American competition. The students that I have sent to European competitions do take into consideration the sort of wow factor of what they're doing, but most of us recognize that there are many tricks that are very, very difficult that the audience doesn't understand, that it's difficult, so it would be rated highly in a skill-based competition, but in front of an audience, it wouldn't have as much of an effect. And so my students tend to be selecting more towards wow factor tricks, and certainly high level as well, but without just looking at something that they're going to get points on within a sportification type competition.
Right. Well, and it's fascinating.
If I can say really quick on that, just a lot of students that I've talked to who are kind of coming up, while they are focused on their career, they also know getting a silver medal at one of the European competitions, or a medal for one of the major American competitions, that will help their career, because a lot of the agents and people who watch the show, they don't know what good and bad is in the circus and juggling community. So if you have that just kind of gives you a degree of credit where you're more likely to get hired than the next person.
Sure, I definitely have students that are aspiring to, and I mean, I don't mean to like imply any offense here, but I have a lot of students that are certainly aspiring to do international competitions, European competitions, and things like that. I don't have any students that are like, I desperately want to be in this American competition next year. Right. We just haven't gotten to that level yet. There are things that pop up. I mean, I feel like we're at the point right now in the United States where the competitions that we have like pop up and people are like, oh yeah, maybe I'll apply on a whim. I don't feel like it's anybody's like main motivating factor right now. And maybe that will change. And also, I think that if we start to see some things in the United States, competitions that are more like European festivals, and that they're not limited to like only aerial apparatus or something like that, I think that that will also help to elevate and put us more on par with other competitions throughout the world.
Tammy, do you want to speak to that?
That's all really, those are all really good points. And that you're right, in America, we're not at that level. And so like my goal is, speaking of like, they're concerned about their careers, right? And I'm also very concerned about their careers. And so what I'm trying to do at US Aerial is build as much of a platform as possible for people to help use as a springboard for their career. And I'm, throughout the years, I talk to everybody and I get feedback like, what do you want? What can we at US Aerial do for you? What can we provide to you that would be of value to help you have the career that you want? And the feedback I've gotten is, well, I want to be seen in front of Cirque du Soleil, Cirque was, Circus Flora, whatever. And so that's what I've been doing, is getting them whatever they ask me for, essentially trying to help them with their career in whatever way. So I totally agree 100%. They should be focused on their career. And that's also what we're here for, is to help them with their career in however we can do that.
Well, and I think one of the things, speaking from Circus Now's perspective, so Circus Now's kind of role in the sector to be looking at the entire ecosystem that we're creating for circus arts in America and saying, what creates a healthy artistic ecosystem for circus artists and for the emergence in America of this really exciting art form, that has existed in the United States since the United States has existed, but is certainly seeing this huge renaissance in interest and energy and participation. And one of the things we're seeing, everyone keeps referencing, the European festivals and the European competitions that are a super important part of Europe's thriving circus ecosystem. And so I think as a community and as a circus community, looking at the people who are growing little competitions here in the United States and supporting them both with our participation and with our art and with some attention, I think is an important part of building up an important circus ecosystem. And as we build that environment here in the United States, kind of checking in and making sure that the values that we're building that system with are the values that really represent circus, because circus represents a very specific set of values of inclusion and, I don't want to say non-competitiveness, because we are talking about competitions, but certainly of camaraderie, of everyone rises in the boat together, not so much sportification in the way that gymnastics, for example, is, one person takes home the gold, but in the sense of this is an art form that can be promoted from all angles and can be participated in from all angles.
I think this is Elsie speaking. I think one of the things that is different about sport is, and Greg spoke about this as well, is that there is different age appropriate categories and maybe experience level categories in some of the competitions as well. So you could have someone who's maybe a junior performer who's never really been on stage before and it's their first time out. One of the things that I'm hearing from my European counterparts is that they don't have respect for what's happening on some of the American competition stages, because it's not clearly delineated whether the competition is for people who feel like they are ready to be professional performers on an international stage, or if they're just starting to get into performing and they still don't have the toes pointed and maybe they don't have the flashy costumes yet and they just need a place to get out on stage. And there's a real value to being able to give our new performers some place to showcase their work. But calling it a competition or a festival gives us, as Americans, a different, people in Europe look at us as being like a little above ourselves when we say we're having a circus festival, and it's for people who have never been on a stage before. That would be more like a showcase, or what circus schools used to be able to offer, which is performance opportunities for beginners.
That's a really, really good point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as we see more and more of these showcases and competitions start to take root and prosper in the United States, I think we'll probably see more specific classification of what they're doing. Tammy, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So at some point, the level of professional that's on the stage, especially for a new competition, is the best that they can get. And so it's you know, for ours, for example, you know, it is about having the best in the world, and that's our goal, and we're still new. And so every year, you know, you just grow and grow and have more reach, and hopefully people participate. And it's sort of, it's like the level that we can provide is really just whatever the community gives us. And also back to what Adam was saying in terms of the American competitions and guiding them, so that the ecosystem is what you want it to be in America. Totally open to feedback, you know, like I at US Aerial, we're totally open to whatever feedback you want to share with us, and we're happy to meld and provide the, you know, the correct ecosystem in America that is ideal. And that's why we have conversations like this, right?
And I want to take this to Greg real quick, and then over to Jessica. Partially, Greg, because the IJA is an international organization, and the IJA competition for what it is really respected internationally. How do you, other than being 50 years old, how do you think juggling has differentiated itself in the United States in a way that has been really beneficial for it? You know, how is juggling community, more than any other community in the United States, is really highly developed when it comes to both gathering in force and in competitions and in recognizing work? How do you think that has happened, and what do you think we can learn from it?
Well, I think one of the things about historically is juggling is always been a little bit separate from circus. Even if you just look at the mindset of the average juggler, it's just a little bit different than the other circus arts, the contortionists, the aerialists, you know, the acrobatics. And because of that, it had its own little community. And it's a strange community. Like, out of recreational jugglers, I would probably say 60% of them have a job in a technical field. They're science teachers or engineers and stuff like that. So it's not completely a physical component. There is kind of a mental endurance you have to be a juggler. And because of that, it was always separate. So that community built by itself, separate from the circus community in America, and just, you know, it built up over years, and there was always, you know, probably about at least 30 or 40 people who applied, and it built up more and more to the point where they could no longer run preliminaries on site, where they had to turn to a video system. And it also helps that they also have, you know, reward money. You typically not a lot. Typically it's like a couple $1,000 or something, but I think the sponsors can add to it. I think to this year in El Paso, it's $10,000 for the individual gold and $10,000 for the individual team, and something like $5,000 for the juniors. So, you know, if you think about that, you know, if you're not, you know, that's, you know, a considerable amount of money, and people will actually prepare for it very, very well. So, I'm not sure where that puts the circus community. I mean, the circus community in America is fairly new as a community. I know the shows have been out for a while and professionals have been out there, but the idea of sharing skills between different schools and stuff is relatively young, maybe, you know, 20 years old and stuff like that. So I think as that builds and builds, just the skills are going to get higher and higher, and we'll have certain schools that host competitions that will get more renowned, and eventually be to the point where they'll be along the line of Monte Carlo or some of the European circus festivals.
Oh, the day. Jessica,
It'll take a while.
Yeah, I wanted to bump this back up to you to see your thoughts.
Yeah, the circus community, at least out on the West Coast, is fairly new. It's growing more and more each year. Like when I first started, 13 years ago, it was pretty non-existent. Out here, it was very small. It was like really hard to find places to train. I know when I started training, I was actually like learning classes that were held inside of a nightclub. So it's great to see that now in LA, there's tons and tons of places opening up each year. Getting more and more places for people to go and safely learn from teachers and instructors that have a good training background to share with them. But yeah, it definitely has a long way to go, I think, to where it would develop into something like the juggling community seems to be a lot larger than just the circus community in general. So I would love to see it go in that direction. And I'd love to see the schools, the different training facilities, work a little bit more together to make that happen. I do feel a little bit like sometimes schools are very closed off from one another to some extent. I mean, that's one of the other reasons in starting Circus Star was to try to get students from all over, from my training facility, from the other ones in the area, to try to get their students out in the public and performing for emerging talent. So I'm really hoping that we can kind of connect the different facilities together to make the community, more just larger and more tight-knit, I guess.
Great. That is almost the end of our time. I think I just wanted to open up for any final thoughts from around the table. If anyone wants to throw any final thoughts in about competition and its role in kind of the growing American circus sector, I can just bop around the table. Anybody who wants to add some final thoughts?
This is Elsie, and I did want to say that from the perspective of someone who runs a professional training program, that until the circus schools in the United States can improve what we're able to offer, the competitions aren't going to have the quality that we would like to see them have. So I just want to make sure that I'm taking ownership of the fact that we as circus schools are as responsible for the level of competition in this country. It's not just the responsibility of those of you who are producing the competitions.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Elsie. This is Shayna again, and I realized that I forgot to mention one of my aspects of my experience with this is that I've competed in wheel competitions in steer wheel, and so that was a really interesting and not entirely enjoyable process of taking steer wheel, which to me is like an incredibly artistic form and really fun, and, having to commodify it down to a list of required elements, and you have to repeat each element a certain amount of times, and your act has to be this long, and it was really difficult. It kind of took all the fun out of it for me, and I really hope that the aspect of competition that we're talking about in the United States doesn't end up becoming that sportified. I think it would be a real shame, and it would take a lot of the joy out of it for a lot of people.
Tammy?
So that's sort of my perspective coming from that end as well.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, and that's where the pole community has gone. A lot of the competitions have gone that way. Like, post pointed, did you do 3 fongies, or like limiting the tricks and stuff like that. And we're trying to be more open, probably like what Jessica is also doing. It's really just about the show that you can put on and the artistic value. And there's a little bit of difficulty and technical in there as well. But I just wanted to say that thank you, Elsie, for your comments. But I just wanted to really emphasize the fact that we are here for the community and totally open to feedback. And we just want to help you, everybody in the community, as much as possible. So 100% reach out to us if you think there's something we can provide that we're not, or doing something in a way that people think is weird. Like I said, I am a professional. I am I'm not a professional aerialist. I am from the business side. So I totally 100% appreciate the professional aerialists giving me feedback on how to properly, help. So,
yeah.
Thank you, Tammy.
I'd like to chime in just at the end and saying if we want the competitions to be taken more seriously here in America, we're probably going to have to come together as the different schools co-sponsoring one event per year maybe, and actually maybe put up sponsorships money to bring the best artists from each school to this one location to compete against each other each year. And that's maybe a thought we might want to think about going forward, is because right now we have a lot of different festivals going on in America, and there seem to be kind of regional, which is good, but I think if the group of circus schools that are operating throughout, the U.S. Kind of come together and try to find a plan where they have like one thing either once a year or once every 2 years with the best each school can give, and then maybe slowly will become taken a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, and this is Jessica. That's kind of what I was saying with hoping, to have the different circus schools kind of unite and have their students. It would be my hope that they would try to participate. I mean, sponsorship would be great, but to present it to their more advanced students that are ready to start performing, to try to get them involved in it and encourage them in it. I just don't know if, out in the West Coast, I don't know that I feel that yet with like the competition that I produce each year, that there's a whole lot of encouragement. It's more just like performers or students rather, I guess, see or hear about it through social media or someplace like that, and they're like, oh, that's something I want to do. But I don't feel an active involvement of like studios out here or throughout the US, being like, hey, there's competition available, and I think that you should compete because you're at that level. So that's one of the hopes that eventually we'll get there, at least for me.
For sure. And some of the pathways for getting there, I'll say in conclusion, are already kind of well underway. I'd like to take the opportunity to invite everyone who is listening or who doesn't already know about it to check out the American Circus Educators Association. They have a biannual educators gathering. This year it's in October 6th through 10th in San Francisco at the San Francisco Circus Center and Acro Sports, right off the Haight-Ashbury. It's going to be an incredible event. 2 years ago, it was in Montreal at the École Nationale de Cirque. So if you're a circus educator or a circus school owner and you want to find the circus education community and get together and talk about things like this, that conference is the place to be. It's biannual. I'm on the board of directors for that organization, a really incredible organization that offers both insurance and safety programming and public guidelines for safety kind of practice and consultation, as well as offering insurance and stuff like that. So if you haven't checked out AmericanCircusEducators.org, please check out AmericanCircusEducators.org. I'll also take the opportunity to talk a little bit about Circus Now. Circus Now is kind of the national gathering organization for emerging artists and professional performers, either as individuals or as companies. We have a few events through the year. We just had a major 3-year strategic planning process that we finished getting through, and we're starting to post on that. If you enjoyed this panel and listening to all of our amazing panelists, then please consider supporting Circus Now with either your membership or donation. You can just go to circusnow.org and you'll get pointed right towards our donation page. We are currently a basically volunteer-run organization, and we're hoping to kind of get bigger and better. We're entering our 3rd year and trying to start to pay some of our staff. So if you enjoyed this panel or anything else that Circus Now offers, please check us out at circusnow.org and support us with your dollars, because that's what makes the world go round. And I just want to say a final thank you to all of my panelists who gave an hour of their time just to talk about competition in circus in the United States. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And please, if you have any questions about the panel or any of the things we talked about, you can comment below in whatever form we end up posting this. Thank you, everyone, so much again. And I can't wait to see all of you sometime in my life.
Thank you, Adam.